Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Voices of Resilience. My name is Nathan Hofer, and I am the Director of Campus Operations for the Lost and Found Association. If you don't know who the Lost and Found Association is, and you are here because of our wonderful guest, Elaine Pasqua, who is going to be, I'll introduce in a moment. I'll give you a little intro about who we are. We're a local, South Dakota, locally based nonprofit organization that focuses on building resilience in young adults as a form of preventative mental health, because we believe in a world where suicide isn't a thing anymore. And we want to work towards that every day. And so by giving people skills for resilience, we are giving them the tools to be able to handle the inevitable difficulties that we all face in life, and to build communities of support, and just understand and care for one another better. So we do that. We get to have times like this where we have every Thursday, we get to have Voices of Resilience and our guests, which share wonderful things. And I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, the Astrup Family Foundation and American Bank and Trust, for supporting not just Voices of Resilience, which they do, but also the work that we do with Lost and Found. So that's who we are. That's why we do this every week, to give you some good info, good insight, and to share stories with wonderful people like our guest today, Elaine. Hi, Elaine. How are you?
Nathan, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's Elaine and I go way back to when I was working in higher ed at the University of South Dakota, and then USF. We had you back to back.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so that's been 2014 before last time I saw you before now. So
Time flies.
yeah, and before I ask you to just give us a little bit of background about yourself and your experience, I want to encourage anyone watching live to throw any questions, comments you have in the Facebook comments area, and we will bring those into the feed and ask Elaine, because as I say every week, you have to listen to me talk all the time, and no one wants to just hear what I have to say. Let's hear what you have to say. So anyways, Elaine, why don't you give us a little bit of intro about who you are, the work you do, and what life looks like for you right now.
Life, my living room. Here I am. My music room, actually, is what we call it. I have been speaking. I'm a professional speaker, actually certified professional speaker from National Speaker Association. But I've been speaking across the country for almost 25 years, and it started after losing my mom and stepdad to AIDS-related complications, which we'll probably talk about more later. And it was this incredible passion that I had, and I built this career and started working with health professionals here. I live in the Philadelphia area now, and I used to be a dental hygienist, so I was working with health professionals talking about the psychosocial dynamics of HIV and AIDS. And then I went on and got on the college circuit and started speaking in colleges and universities across the country. I have worked with over 700 different campuses. Many I have been at multiple times. Like I've worked with Villanova athletes for 19 years and Fordham University for 20 years. So many universities have become family to me. And then I broadened my reach and I started working with professional athletes. So, and I broadened my area of expertise. So I started to not just address HIV and AIDS, but I saw the need to address high-risk behaviors in general because many are cofactors of one another. So I address high-risk drinking, drug abuse, sexual assault, sexual health, now social media. And I just keep expanding my areas of expertise, talking about mental health and resilience, because things have continually changed over the course of the 25 years that I've been speaking. So I need to remain relevant. So I've worked with 31 teams across the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. I've worked with the military, and I'm doing training also for corporations and businesses as well. So that's it in a nutshell.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Just a couple things. Yeah,
I guess
just that's
that's
it.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's so telling that you say you have to you've continually worked to shape your area of expertise, because things change. So over the course of 25 years, like you said, but I think things, especially in the last year, have changed very, very rapidly. I'm sure you've seen a significant, I know, I don't have to think, I know you've seen a significant shift in the work that you do, and the content and your ability to work. Like you said, this is your world in the background there, but you've got a
Right.
beautiful,
There's
we
my
were just talking
cat,
about
Red, on the couch. For everybody who's
yes,
Red, there he is.
yeah.
So
It looks a bit like a very content dude.
yeah, he's a big cat. He gained 2 pounds this year. He's coming in at 15 pounds. But no, Nathan, my life has dramatically changed. I mean, I lost this career. I didn't lose the career. I'm hanging on, and
Hmm.
I think life is all about pivoting. That's why I continue to change my areas of expertise over the years, because if you just stay in one place, you will become irrelevant and you might phase yourself out. And I always do what I call the Madonna model. And they say that the basis of her success was that she continued to reinvent herself over the course of her career. So just to basically sum up where I'm at now, I typically would fly 65 flights a year. I have flown 3. I have not been in the airport since the beginning of March. And everything shut down for me within a couple of days. You work hard to schedule and to create this work for yourself, because speaking is not just this part, the front end, but the back end is the most difficult part, and keeping the business and keeping the bookings rolling. And so that all fell apart. So you learn to pivot. So then you set up a studio in your living room and you put yourself out there that you can do virtual. And I got certified as a virtual presenter, which shows that I've got the quality, I have the quiet, I have the lighting, because a lot of companies are bringing in virtual presenters and they're really upset with the quality of the program that they're getting. And you need to learn to engage yourself virtually too. It's harder than when you're on stage. Now I can talk with my hands standing in my
Yeah,
living room where I didn't before. So
it's very different, that's for sure. I mean, we've been doing, if you had asked me back in February if I would be doing a weekly live cast, I would have said, haha, you're right, but here we are,
and that's
2020.
part of resilience, isn't it?
Yeah, you said words that a word that's my favorite and one that I'm sick of hearing is, one is resilience is my favorite, and pivot, tired of pivoting. But you know what? We always have to pivot. You never get to stop.
We are pivoting. I know.
Yeah.
And we even just put out another offer, my husband and I talk about pivoting, because we started making dance videos in
Mhm.
our living room, and we got a following. For we come out through the double doors on either side and we dance. And I was dressed in a halter gown from the 70s, and we did Staying Alive with medical gear on. And we just did we did Irish step dancing to Charleston, and people loved it. So now, new pivot, we put it out this week that we are hearing of events where the MC is a little drier. And so we said, let's spice it up. Music energizes people, it brings people together, it brings back happy memories. So we have now put it out there on social media this week that we are available to MC events. And in between each guest that we are introducing, we will quickly change costumes, come out, do a whole new dance, and then do the introduction. So another pivot. Just had to be creative.
I love it. I don't know your husband, but you know what? I love it.
He's
That makes me
working
happy.
me. He's working.
He,
If you can get a guy to dress up and do this, he's a good guy. And he's like, he likes to have fun. And usually the best part about doing this is you're with somebody 24/7. And that was the whole basis. Are you
mhm.
tired of being with the same person 24/7? Well, here's the catch. Dress up as somebody else and host a dance party. So that's how we began that was the
Uh,
inception. And but when we're getting into the costumes and we're usually doubled over in laughter. I mean, we have fun when we're doing it. So
well, I think you gotta. It's a pretty special little niche you found there, and I think it's awesome. I love it. I love it.
you only live
Uh,
once. You have to have fun.
and I know when we initially talked, I was talking to you about what we do, what Voices of Resilience is about, and you were really excited about the topic of focusing in the month of November. We're talking about gratefulness. We're talking about being connected. We're talking about building those relationships, and it's so hard right now to remain connected. I have family who lives an hour away, but we don't see them because because of the state that we're in right now,
Right.
being the state of being. It's like we don't want to. My parents are, they're not older, but my grandma's there. Like she's in her 90s. I'm not going to just risk anything with her, so we haven't seen them. And they're right there. Like, and we are dealing with isolation, with lack of connection, and so obviously something about this topic really sparked some fire in your eyes. I remember
I know.
seeing you just get excited about it. So I was wondering if you could just talk about what it was about, obviously connections have been important in the line of work you do, in maintaining relationships and friendships, but also, what do you find about making a connection? What are the critical pieces that people need to know, especially in a time of, I mean, we're like you said, we're all virtual now. We don't get to go out and grab a cup of coffee, even if we wanted to. We just don't get to do it in the same way. So
No, we don't do, but I think what we need to do is, first of all, accept where we are and accept it with grace and know that we're going to make the best of it. And even though I've had many losses this year, my rituals, there were concerts, there were always specific events that I would go to in New York City because I grew up right outside of New York. We have a music jam at our house once a month that we now have not had since January or February. And so we've lost a lot, but we've gained a lot in the same time. And so I think what we need to do is look at the positive. Let's go to the connections. So in terms of connection, we have to be intentional about connecting with people, because I think what happens is when you are in your home, you can sort of just start to wrap that cocoon around you and not make a point to reach out to people. So when the COVID pandemic first hit and we were told to shelter in place back at the end of March, I intentionally called somebody every single day whom I love dearly, because I have friends all over the country who I hadn't seen for a long time. And we would be on the phone for at least an hour. And that just, it warms your heart. It in so many ways, because I've been running like a mad woman for so many years, this gave me a chance to really slow down and to really focus on the relationships, because I'm a people person. I'm one of those I'm one of those people that always likes to touch. People have always said that, gee, Elaine, you're always good about staying in touch, because I love people. They energize me. And so I intentionally did that. Now you can still see people outside. We're going to have a very small Thanksgiving. Just my one son is coming. My other one will not be here because he's with his in-laws. And my sister and her one child is coming, and her husband. And we are going to be outside. Nobody is going to be in the house. And we are going to stay separate. I live in a wonderful neighborhood. I have a neighbor, my next door neighbor's dog, Murphy, comes over here every day. He's got quite a social media following now too. And my neighbor Kristen and I, she walks her two dogs, I walk Murphy, and we're always 6 feet apart. So we get that face-to-face touching and conversation. And so sometimes those are enough in a day to keep you going and to energize you. And then, of course, you have Facebook Live. I mean, the technology that we have has been remarkable. I'm a member of National Speakers Association, and that is a family to me. And there's one small community group. We meet every single Wednesday, and we just have fun. And so many of the members have said, I look forward to this every single week. This gets me through the week. And as soon as I get off of here, I have a 2-hour training with National Speaker Association. And then I'm a member president-elect of the Philadelphia chapter. We have a guest speaker tonight. So I'm going to be social, for the rest of the day, and it's going to be good. So we can't hug each other. I stopped by my brother's house on the way home from renewing my license this morning, and we stood outside. It was 30 degrees out for about 35 minutes, and we had the most wonderful visit. We both wore masks, even though we were outside. So you can plan it. We've had Zoom parties in the beginning. We had the greatest Zoom party. We had a guy playing cello in New York, someone playing piano here, and someone going by with like Barbie dolls and Gumby and just silly things. And we were all laughing, and we had such a great time for 2 hours. And then you didn't have to get in your car and drive home. You just walked in the other room and you were good. So you have to plan it.
now, as you mentioned, the virtual component, not to stay there too long, but I love what you were sharing about your Zoom happy hours. What I'm hearing a lot with the young adults we work with, and and even folks who are in certain industries, they are on Zoom all the time. We have
Yeah.
I was just in one of the groups I'm a member of today. One of our the VP there was saying that they're talking about what we can do as a group to connect, and like a virtual happy hour. And She was like, I am on Zoom 8 hours a day, and I am just, by the end of the day, I'm tired of looking at a screen. So what can you do to encourage people to see past that barrier, and that Zoom fatigue, to find ways to be connected?
And I totally get it, Nathan, because I have moments where I say, I'm zoomed out. And I'm a physical person. I love moving. And that was what I miss most about my career, because when you're a speaker, you're running through airports, you're standing on stage, you're glad handing, you're meeting people all around you. So in some ways, it's a very physical job. So now I'm stuck in front of the computer now too. So I think what you need to do is, although you're in meetings all day, um, sometimes we take a break, and then just follow your desires and your needs. And if you feel like you're missing and craving the friendships, because that's important. Meetings are different than friendships. And that's, we were going to talk about connection today, and that power of connection for helping us get through challenging times. So you want to be intentional, maybe. And we had one friend, actually he's from South Dakota, and we were on a Zoom call with him for 3 hours back in April. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we're in the kitchen, we're cooking and we're stuff, and we had the computer open. So we were all kind of moving around. He was doing his thing, but yet we were still talking for the 3 hours. And the other thing too is finding balance. I am lucky because of the physical place where I am at right now, and my home, and I'm an avid gardener. I have extensive gardens, and my gardens have been my therapy, and it's my physical exercise. I say people go to the gym, I go to the gardens, and I'm out there all day long, pruning, pulling, weeding, digging, and it's constant physical exercise. So if you can find a way to find a balance, maybe you've been on a Zoom meeting all day, but you want to connect with somebody, go take a walk first and just put in a good 20-minute 15, 20-minute mile. And then you'll come in and you might be content to sit or pick up your phone and FaceTime with somebody. And then you can walk and talk to somebody at the same time. And I've done that as well too. So, you're kind of looking at them, you're seeing where they're at. So
That's great advice. And I think it's unique, because I think a lot of folks think that they need to, I'm one of them sometimes, is that you need to sit and like be right here, looking at the camera, and not and I love that you were sharing, like, you just did life. You hung out, but you just did life. Like, you, obviously it's different than if you were in person, but you're both doing the same thing, keeping each other company, talking through things.
we laugh for 3 hours,
Yeah,
and it's great.
it's awesome. That's awesome. So what is it, what is it about connection that that you, like I said, kind of coming back around to it, because I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. You have had to, connection has been a key part of your career path, of your, what you continue to do. Like you said, you keep going back to the same places often because you have built strong connections. So what is it about connection that you have found that you are so, so good at building
Passionate
those
about.
connections,
Well,
and
first of
passionate about
all,
it too? Yeah.
I'll give you the background of my history. My father, Tony Pasqua, was a salesman. He sold heavy equipment for construction. And this guy knew how to work a crowd. Everybody in town loved him. Everybody knew him. I remember going to the World's Fair as a kid, and you're waiting online. We knew everybody's life story around us. And that was the training that I grew up with. So I've had this ability, and not everybody does, to just be able to strike up a conversation with people around me. And to me, it's like break through that initial barrier. How's the weather today? Oh, I like your outfit, or something. And one thing leads to another, but you don't know who you're next to. Now, in regards to my career, I would not be where I am today if I did not reach out to people. So right after my mom died, I knew I wanted to speak. I got her permission about a week before she died to finally share her story, because we had to keep it a secret. And so I immediately reached out to the head of AIDS surveillance here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And he was like, oh my God, I need you. So many of my speakers who are HIV positive, they're getting sick. They can't make it through the night. And so this is perfect. So that was the initial step. And then when I spoke for a few years, and it was just me calling people up. Hi, this is who I am. This is my story. And I wasn't afraid. And the most important thing is, don't be afraid of rejection. Somebody says no, just dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and go on to the next thing. Don't let one negative experience pull you down. And I never did. I would just try harder. And then I reached out to a college that's 10 minutes from my house, Delaware Valley College. And I called the dean of students, this guy, Jay Wright, who sadly passed away this year. And Jay forever changed my life. And I want to share with all of you, there's a book called The Defining Decade, Why Your 20s Matter, How to Make the Most of Them Now. And my favorite chapter, it's by Meg Jay, PhD, Jay, PhD. And what the one chapter that was my favorite is called Weak Ties. And basically what they found, it was a study that was done in the 70s out at Stanford University, that the people who are in our immediate inner circle that kind of speak our same language, have the same values, are not the ones that are going to necessarily influence us in terms of pushing us forward in our careers. It's the ones that we brush up against, the happenstance. And so I called Jay. He brought me in to do an RA training program, and he brought me back to his office, and he sat me down and he said, "Do you have a speaking agent?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, there are people that do this for a living. They go at colleges all around the country, and they charge a lot more than you charged us." And he said, "I've seen a lot of AIDS programs, but I really, really like this one." And Jay, who I only knew for like an hour, took an exorbitant amount of time to mentor me, to help me find an agent, to help me put together a video reel, all of it. And this guy got me on the national circuit and forever changed my life, the quality of my life for my family. And I will be forever in debt to him. And then there were other people along the way who I reached out to, other fellow speakers that were working on the college circuit who didn't know me, who were kind enough to stay on the phone and answer some questions. And then when I wanted to work, one day I said, and this is how my career has always gone, "Oh, gee, I want to do this." I started to create a niche for working with collegiate athletes. And so I've done work for almost all the major Division I football programs now. And I decided one day, gee, I'd like to work for the NFL. And so I started looking up phone numbers, and I found the number of the New York Giants, and not the ticket office. There's a difference. And I called, and they connected me with the guy who was head of player development. And he was very nice and very polite. And he said, "Thanks, but no thanks." So I didn't give up. I called a year later. Now, you don't want to bug people, but I waited a year, and I called him, and he goes, "This sounds kind of interesting. I'll have my intern look at it." Nothing, crickets. Then I called one more year later, and we talked again. He was very nice. I said, "I'll come in for free." And people are like, "What, are you nuts? You went in for free?" I said, "Yeah, but that picture of me with my arm around Odell Beckman is worth $1 million." But what happened was they brought me in. This was the first year I didn't work with them, but I did 9 years in a row. And then from there, you always want to be able to ask. Don't be afraid to ask, but the timing is right. You don't just go in and ask right away. You establish relationships. So I became really good friends with the team psychologist, and I started to mentor her about her speaking that she wanted to do in regards to life after sports. 6 months in, I remember I was sitting on a train going to New York, and we were talking. I was helping her, and I said, "Do you have a contact at the NFL?" She goes, "Oh yeah, the head of player engagement is this woman who used to work here for the Giants." So she connected me with her. We talked. I sent her my proposal. She got back to me and said, "We love it." And then the NFL started bringing me into a few conferences, and that opened the door to more teams. So that power of connection in terms of career is really important. And again, you don't know who's sitting next to you. Sometimes we have our unconscious biases. We make quick assessments, and that can throw us off. A friend of mine talked about how he sat on a plane and this old lady sat next to him, and he was like, "Oh, this is not who I wanted to be sitting next to." Didn't talk to her the whole flight. This guy is really into music, and in classical, he loves Stravinsky. As the plane was landing, they had their little, perfunctory couple of minutes of conversation. And it turns out that this woman was from Russia, and she knew Stravinsky really well. And he was kicking himself that he kind of blew her off. So talk to people. And even if it's not even to gain something, but it's to learn about people and to learn about their lives because it enriches ours.
I am not a it's not a Giants fan, but I'm a little jealous about getting to have a picture with Odell Beckham Jr. A little
Well, I
jealous.
worked for the Bears or the
Here
Tampa Bay.
I'm an odd duck. I'm a Niners fan, which has been really difficult.
No,
So
I
we're
couldn't
just
get
not
my
going to talk
family
about
together
it.
then. Okay.
We're just not going to talk about it this year. They took the year off, I think. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. What I love that. I love that I I'm a very much an extrovert. So for me, sitting next to someone, having a long conversation about nothing and everything at the same time, that's something that can really energize myself. But then I have someone like my wife, who obviously I think she's pretty great, but she is super introverted. Like we've done like all of the I love personality assessment stuffs like MBTI, Enneagram, DISC, and we are always very much opposite, especially on the extroversion introversion scale. So what for someone who's not naturally inclined to that, who feels anxious about having a conversation with someone who they don't know, what are some pieces of advice you can give to those people about building connection? I mean, obviously you shared the benefits very clearly, but that doesn't necessarily make that something's good for you, but you still don't do it. Like
Right, right.
it's hard to do because it invokes anxiety. And so, what are some things that you can piece of advice that you can give to someone who that's not their natural place of being?
Inclination. Yeah. I think it's almost like you have to, again, break through that barrier. It's almost like muscle memory. For me, it comes easy because I've been doing it all my life and I take it for granted. And then I meet a certain person and I think, oh, well, they're stuck up. They're not talking to me. And then I have to like shift my thinking and go, no, 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 they're shy. And I've met people who I feel are quite outgoing, but then they tell me that they're shy, but I've had the ability to be able to bring them out. So for somebody like your wife and people who are not comfortable with it, um, what I do say is just try to have that initial step to break through that wall and just say to somebody, how are you doing today? Gee, look at it's going to rain today, or are you ready for the holidays? Or, there's more that unites us than divides us, and we can always find something. And usually it's an opener, and then the opener will take you. I mean, I end up getting the most incredible details from people's lives, but it usually just starts with that little common opener. I had a guy, I was in Charlotte Airport online one day and on security. And I just turned to the guy behind me and I looked up at him. I'm short and he was tall. And I said, this gets really old after a while, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah, it does. And then we started talking. And then we got to the other side of the security. His name is Dave Sanderson. We are now very good friends. And it turns out that he was one of the people that was on the plane that Sully landed on the Hudson River. And he had a remarkable story. And I sort of was doing some mentoring. I mean, he's done well on his own for his own speaking now. He left the corporate world. And, but it's just some of my closest friends are people that I've met on the street where I've just turned and said one simple thing. And so don't be afraid to say that one simple thing, and you'll gain confidence as time goes on. What I'm finding, Nathan, and that concerns me is again because I've been doing this for so long, I'm seeing a difference in the way that younger people are communicating because they were trained on their devices and they're texting, their instant messaging. They didn't have that same eye to eye contact and verbal expression that my generation grew up with, that the following generation grew up with. And so I get concerned. I'll sit on a plane and a young person will sit next to me and I'll just turn to them, I'll say, good morning. And they'll look at me with like the fear of God and they put their earbuds in and they just go right like this. And it's like, oh man, we just missed out on so much. We could have had such a, I'm almost like wrapping my arms around people. We're laughing and stuff, and you become best friends with people sometimes on a flight, and then you never see them again, and but it's, you touched, and that's a good thing.
On an unrelated sidebar, you mentioned airplanes are like some of the best times for those moments. And I remember when I was first job hunting after grad school, running into just someone on the plane, just chatting with them. And, I was talking about like, what I was doing. He was talking about what he was doing. And I had this, we came up that I had this really long layover at the Denver airport. And he's like, oh, hey, why don't you just use my first, like, he let me hang out in the first class lounge with him. And then he left because his flight left. He's like, just hang out here the rest of the day if you want. And I'm like, okay, like you never know because, there are people out there who aren't always, might not be kind, but more often than not, you run into someone who you have something in common with that you don't know and don't
The
expect.
majority of the people are kind, and sometimes you could just be laughing. I remember going through security. I think I was in Chicago. It was early in the morning. We had this little old lady. I'm 5'3". She must have been about 4'8". And they had her spread eagle. They were running the wand up and down. And I ran right over to her and I said, I'm so glad they're frisking you because you scared the hell out of me. And everybody just started laughing and she was laughing. And then I just went on my way, so it's just fun to connect with people and it secretes endorphins. I mean, humans are, we are meant to be connected. It goes back to the primal times of working with each other. And when they look at, they go into the blue zones. Are you familiar with the blue zones, Nathan?
I'm not. So I would love to hear more.
So the blue zones are the areas of the world where people have extended longevity. And there's an island in Greece, there's a place in Japan, and they go in and they look at these people and how they lived. And one of the things that they found is that these people have very, very strong social networks and connection. And they find that when you have direct contact with somebody, it actually triggers parts of the nervous system that release a cocktail that it's like a cocktail of neurotransmitters that makes us. It actually reduces our levels of stress and anxiety, and so if we have that face-to-face connection, then, it makes us more resilient. It has less stress. They even find that people that are not as social tend to get colds more often. So we're healthier. It boosts our immune system, our mental health. They find that levels of depression are diminished when people are connecting to one another and are more social to one another. So.
That's awesome. And I saw something, and I've probably mentioned this in other Voices of Resilience calls. So anyone who's listening now and you've heard me say this, I'm sorry. But I saw a study recently that was, I don't know when it was published, but they said, if you live in a space with bad air quality, you are 4% more likely to die earlier than you would, what would be the expected age of longevity. And when you're in isolation, when you aren't connected, when you are dealing with profound loneliness, not being alone, loneliness, there's a difference, of course, that you're 46% more likely to die at a younger age. And
Wow.
That was something that I think is really, really a really sobering fact to think about, especially as, you mentioned, the varying, generations that we have. We have, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and I fall in the millennial category on the upper end of that because when I was in college, Facebook just started. I didn't start texting until I was a freshman in college. I didn't have a smartphone until grad school. It's just, it is very different. Even when I was growing up, we didn't have internet access at our house in the country until I was in high school, and then it was I could make the dial-up noises, but we don't want that. But you had to experience that. If you've never heard the dial-up noises, just YouTube it because it's universal and it will haunt your dreams. But it's very different
now.
So especially now, I think what I'm seeing, even right at the beginning of this pandemic, even there was folks that I connected with that they are, by their own definition, very introverted and didn't feel like they needed to be around people at work. Sometimes that would drive them nuts, and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to have to interact. I don't want to go to X meeting, Y meeting, whatever. I don't want to sit around the water cooler." But then, after being in isolation for a couple months, even just saying I didn't realize how much I need those 10-second interactions, those that those 2 minutes where we talk about someone's day, and how they're like, I'm really struggling with this connection. So I'm thankful you mentioned that, because it is a very different world we're in right now. Even if you are attuned to social, or you're attuned to social media, or you're attuned to in-person connection, everything is shifted, and that makes things incredibly difficult right now.
It is. And there's nothing worse than loneliness. I lived with a professional race car driver years ago when I was in my 30s and or late 20s. And we moved to Florida, to the Orlando area, because he was with this team there at that point. And we moved to this place, and he was on the road, and I was all by myself, and I hadn't had a job yet. I didn't know anybody. And for the first time in my life, I experienced loneliness, and it's a horrible feeling. It's really, really difficult. And then I started, after a couple months, to make some friends, and then it all felt so much better again. So we need those people. So, we're in a pandemic. We can't be I mean, again, we can try. We can be with people outside. I mean, they talk about how some people, like you said, you haven't seen your grandmother. You know, if you could bring her to a window or a front door and open the door, and you stay outside on the lawn and you can see each other. We just have to be creative. But it's cold.
Uh, yeah, yeah, it is cold. South Dakota is not known for its right now it's okay. We're okay right now, but tomorrow it could be, -40. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, and I want to kind of rewind back a little bit, because you mentioned your experience of understanding connection and the importance of it from your dad, and I know that was your story with him has a lot of ups, but some a profound, shocking downer, with his and
Yeah.
I'll let you talk about that. I don't need to steal your thunder on that.
No, 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 it's fine. My dad was 49 years old. He looked like the picture of health, although he did smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And he literally dropped dead on a tennis court. And his friends who were with him, his 3 friends who played tennis with him all the time, said that from beginning to the end of the whole event was 30 seconds. And and his one friend talked to me afterwards, Matt, and he said to me, I watched your father die. The whole thing took 30 seconds. I thought about the past, I thought about the present, and I thought about the future, and how everything changed for your family so quickly. And when I got the call the next day, I was alone, and I had 3 roommates. And initially my sister found out. She was one of my roommates, and she went ahead of me. We lived an hour away from home. We were in Western New Jersey at that point. And she went down, and they just said that he had had a heart attack. So I figured, all right, well, I still have to work, and I'll bring my own car. So I called home to see if my brother had been picked up, and my aunt answered the phone. I said, how's he doing? And she couldn't lie to me, and she told me, and I was alone, and it was horrible. And I still remember that moment so clearly, because I was running around the house, and I was crying, and I was looking for one of my roommates. I just wanted somebody to hold me and somebody to comfort me. So that was that time that I experienced the fact that there was nobody there to support me. But when you go through a loss like this, and it's hard because it was so sudden, and I can honestly say the mourning process of that death was about 2 years. And I did 5 minutes of why me, and then I snapped out of that, and I said, well, why not me? And just learning that tough things happen to us, and we have to learn to accept them. But the thing that got us through, when I got to my mom's house, it was remarkable. I grew up 15 miles outside of New York, and it was remarkable to see all the people that were coming and going from our house, people bringing meals, people comforting us. His funeral was the biggest funeral I've ever seen. The line from the church going to the cemetery was just so long. And all those people helped us get through. So although you're in pain, you're thinking about the people. It's sort of like it's a pill, they're supporting you. They're all there. And when you're mourning, it's dark, it's deep. You kind of almost see yourself in the bottom of a hole. And you sometimes say, I want to get out of here, but I can't. But you have to be patient, and you have to work through it. Now, with my mom's death, it was different, because my mom contracted HIV from my stepfather. She married 4 years after my dad died, and he unknowingly contracted HIV from a medical product that he had was given. And so we were not allowed to tell anybody that they were infected. And so we started to feel how the stigma of secrecy can affect people. You can't heal when you hold things in. And it's so important that we have people that we trust and people that we are comfortable with, that we can share our trials, our challenges, because those people are there to support you. And while my mom was dying, there were 6 friends, and I can name them all right now, who called me every single week to check in on me. And I will forever be grateful for them, because I knew that they were there. I knew that they loved me. I knew that they were there to support me. When the social workers and the home healthcare workers were coming into my mother's house, they knew what was going on, and it was such a relief for us to not have to keep the secret. And so I got that understanding of how important it is to be able to share and not be, receding in the background. So 2 different very types of deaths, one preparing, the other very sudden, and seeing the difference, but the one was clouded with the stigma as well. But both of them just taught me how important it is to have people there to support you. With my dad's death, a friend of mine's father died like 10 months before my dad died of a sudden heart attack. And you can be supportive, you can be sympathetic, but you can never truly have the same type of empathy until you live it. And he was one of the first people to come to my dad's viewing. And he knelt down on the floor in front of me. And I said, I know what you're going through now. And he just held my hand and he said, it's going to get a lot harder. And he was so honest. He was so willing. And people were like, weren't you mad at him that he said that? And I said, no, because he prepared me for what was to come. And so that's the power of people around us, people willing to be honest, people willing to be supportive. So that's it. To help you.
Yeah,
And I'll just throw in one more thing, because I think this is important too.
yes,
The power of support groups. So I was never a support group kind of person. And when my mom died, the hospice nurse invited me to join a group it was for adult children who lost a parent. We were all going through the same thing at the same time. And I healed so much faster because of my meetings with this group, because we were all validating. We were sharing our stories and we were validating, because we were all going through parallel emotions at once. And that really helps to heal. So there's so many support groups out there for all of you. If you're struggling with something, it can be very, very effective for you.
Now we are getting kind of around that 40-some minute mark here, where we usually kind of try to start winding things down. But you said something that I don't want to pass up. You mentioned that one of the losses in your life was marred by stigma, and we talk about this often. Part of the reason we have Voices of Resilience, I feel, is because we talk about the hard things. We talk about things that people don't necessarily want to talk about, or we're not supposed to talk about. And mental health is one of those that we know that, especially, I think it differs regionally and by your community, of course, and once again, that community of support you have enables you to be more open and sharing. But as we look in the Midwest here, in the heartland area here, the center of the country, where we have a very, people don't share, people don't talk about it, because they don't know. I don't know if it's that they don't know what to say, or they just don't know how to say it in a way where it's like, I don't want to be a burden on someone, or I don't want to share that intimate part of myself. So how from your own experience, it's different, of course, like, how do you fight through the stigma? How do you fight through those hard things and still build real connections with people, even when you have to talk about something that's, maybe personal, maybe uncomfortable, and something that isn't maybe widely accepted to talk about?
Right. Well, let me say one thing first, and then I have my own personal experience with mental illness as well, that I can speak about. people have skeletons in their closets, and people don't always share what's going on in their own lives. And sometimes when you open up and share, suddenly somebody will say, I lost a good friend to suicide. I have a relative who's mentally ill, and I go through this because I do a lot of work with sexual violence too, and I'll share my story, and then doing my education prevention, and then people will come up to me and share their stories, and even men have shared their stories. So um, don't be afraid to open and share because you can help other people. In terms of mental illness, my mother's brother, my Uncle Red, and my Aunt Honey, they were my godparents, and they lived in my hometown. And they had only one child, my cousin Bobby, who was the firstborn of all of us. And he was paranoid. He was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic when he was 13 years old. So his onset was quite early. And I was very close to them. My parents, I was basically orphaned by the time I was 40 years old. And Aunt Honey and Uncle Red were like parents to me. And I volunteered to become Bobby's legal guardian because I wanted them to die in peace, knowing that he would be cared for and loved. And they really struggled with his mental illness until they joined an organization called NAMI. So it's the National Association of Mental, I'm getting it wrong. So, but NAMI, and I saw how they healed and how they moved through their experience with more grace, with more understanding, and with more support, because the people in that they were all meeting with also had relatives or friends who were mentally ill. And so that's important, is to be able to reach out to share with people, because again, we just saying it. I have a friend from National Speaker Association whose son took his life. We're coming up on the year anniversary, and people can be very quiet again about suicide, and she was not. And she's taught, so she's been so brave. She's taught people so much. A lot of it had to do with the high potency THC that he was dabbing. She has started a nonprofit, and so many people are coming out of the woodwork to her, and they're sharing her stories. So again, that power of connection. We all live through very challenging experiences. They vary, but there are people that have the same commonalities as we do. And so it's important to share. When I made an AIDS quilt, my sister, my brother, and I made an AIDS quilt for my mom, and we went down to DC for that. And the amount of people that were around us sharing the stories of the loved ones they lost, and the experience of the stigma and how it affected them. So it just, again, it reinforces your feelings. It kind of bolsters you. So try to share.
Oh, thank you for that. And as I do every week, I like to try to end our time together with um, looking at what we're excited about, what we have hope for in the future. So, what are some things that you are, as you're looking ahead, that you're very optimistic about, that you have a lot of hope for, that gets you, that you're just like you're really excited about, and I want to just share with us.
I think what I'm hopeful for, but this is my mindset because I'm a cockeyed optimist. Um, I hope that people will take the lessons that they learned from this pandemic. Don't focus on the things that you lost, but focus on the things that mean most to you and that you appreciate. And what I hope that people do is to learn from our experiences. We're going to share this with generations to come of what happened during this period of time when we all had to shut down, and think of it in positive ways, that you are saving lives when you are sheltering in place. We're kind of collectively helping one another. And so take the positive lessons. And I think the positive lessons that are coming out of this are the importance of relationships, and the importance of being together, and the importance of rituals. And just understand that it's temporary, but take those lessons moving forward and have a greater appreciation for the things that you have. Because I sometimes feel like I've been to third world countries, and they have so little, but they're so happy because they have a greater appreciation for things that we have here in this country. And so just stay through the mindset that this is going to be behind us. Maybe it's not going to end as soon as we want it to, but be positive and find other things that, new projects, new hobbies, or whatever. But take those lessons, those deep lessons about relationships and the importance of being with people. I think we're going to go crazy. And Nathan, you know what it's like with spring fever. The snow melts, it's got that warm day, and everybody's out and everybody's going crazy. You know what it's going to be like when this is all over? We're going to be nuts and we're going to have fun.
I love it. And I want to give a quick shout out here. We had a comment come in, and Wendy Dooley, she works for the helpline here in Sioux Falls, and is a frequent watcher. So I like hanging out with Wendy on here. But
Hi,
she's
Wendy.
just saying it's important to share truly where the healing takes place. And actually, there's a chance you met Wendy once upon a time. We worked at USF together. So
Oh,
um,
nice.
who knows?
Yeah,
Passing.
yeah.
And I do want to give a quick shout out here to Elaine. So if you want to connect with Elaine, right here is her website. You can access that, and we'll put that in the comments here as well. But then also we'll just let the whole thing scroll on through here so people can see how to connect with you on Facebook and on Twitter. So
Thank you.
Elaine is obviously, she's a great person, I think, and I'm a little biased, of course, but you mentioned earlier those people that you come across that you brush against, and Elaine and I have truly had minimal contacts, and yet when we were talking about Voices of Resilience, you remember something from 6 years ago, and you think, you know what, that's someone who I'd like to reconnect with, and it's been a joy, it's been a blessing.
And
So
I'm truly honored that you remembered me and reached back out. And again,
well,
that's the power of connection, because together today, maybe we helped other people.
I hope so. And I as always, I think I selfishly benefit from these more than anyone else. So I'm happy. And once again, if you are in this area, or it doesn't matter where you are, if you're in, you know, Alaska or South Dakota, whatever, if you are looking for connection and you want to connect with us at all, feel free to connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Resilient Today. We may not have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination, but we're in this space to provide resilience. We're in this space to be part of the solution for suicide, and we know wonderful people like you mentioned, NAMI. We work with them, the Helpline Center. We have people locally. We work with people nationally, and we have wonderful speakers and guests that join us every week here on Voices of Resilience, like Elaine. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to connect with you and support you with anything going on. So Elaine, thank you again for taking the time to be with
Well,
us today. We
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
It was a pleasure.
And
Nate.
everyone, we will not be here next week because it's Thanksgiving, but we'll see you that first week of December. So thank you
Happy
all.
Thanksgiving,
Stay
everybody.
safe and have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah.